Hello, and welcome back to It's Tech Time. This is video number 3 in my Ansible crash course. I know you're ready to get started using Ansible commands, but there is a little more setup that needs to be done that covers foundational concepts before we can start covering Ansible commands. In this video, we're going to take a basic look at version control. We're going to create a Git repository for our Ansible code. Now, you don't have to know anything about Git or even use version control at all, but it is a very good practice to get into because if you are using Ansible in an enterprise environment, then you will be using version control for your scripts or your Ansible configurations. Now, this will not be an in-depth look at Git because that's beyond the scope of this course, and these videos are already long enough, but we will cover the core concepts that are required for the purposes of this series, and the very basics of Git are really easy to learn. So let's go ahead and get started and create a Git repository, and then we'll cover some basic version control commands also. I'm going to go to github.com, and if you don't have a profile, you can click sign up and go through the steps to create a profile. I already have a profile, so I'm going to sign into mine. Now, once you're logged in, if you've just created an account, you probably won't have much here, but we're going to create a new repository, and you simply do that by clicking new, and I'm going to call my repository Ansible _YouTube YT. I'm going to leave mine public, and I'm going to go ahead and add a README file, and then I'm going to click create repository. And now we have the repository that we're going to be using for the rest of the videos in this series. But there's nothing here but the README file right now, and we only have that because we clicked that checkbox during the setup process. And I'll be honest, I did that just so you'd have something in here to see, but that's completely up to you if you want to do that or not. So before we get much farther, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my profile icon, and then I'm going to go to settings. And then over here on the left, I'm going to click SSH and GPG keys. Now, if you just created your account, you're not going to have anything here. Now, I have a couple of SSH keys already here. But what I want to do is I'm going to add the SSH key from my Ubuntu workstation. So I'm going to click new SSH key, and then I'm going to go back to my terminal. And let me clear the screen so we can see better. And I'm going to cat.ssh id _ ed255.9.pub. Hope if I spelled that right. And so I'll copy this public key. And here in my terminal, I'll paste the key. And I'll give it a title so I can remember it. I'm going to call it my Ansible workstation. And click add SSH key. And if you look, it added it down here to the bottom and it hasn't been used yet. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our repository. And so now what we want to do is we want to copy this to our workstation. So we'll click code, and then we'll click clone with SSH, and we'll copy this to the clipboard, and then go back to our terminal. We'll type in git clone, and then paste the URL we just copied, and click enter. And it's going to ask us to trust the fingerprint. We're going to type in yes, and then it's going to ask for my passphrase to my SSH key. I'll type it in, hit enter. So now if I'll do ls, I'll see the Ansible YouTube repository that we created a minute ago. And so I'll change directory into it and then run ls, and there's that README file. And that is the same README file we saw online. So if I was to cat the README file, I just have that one line like I had in the web browser. So a couple of things you need to do before you start using Git is basically tell it who you are. So we're going to do git config -- global username. I'm going to type in Bo Morgan. And then I'll do git config -- global user.email. And you can put any email address you want to in there. It can be legit. It doesn't have to be legit, whatever. Just something to help identify you in version control. And if you're wondering where Git stores all that information at, you simply can run cat home directory .git config, and there's those global variables we just passed to it for name and email. And if you don't do this, then anytime you make changes to the repository, Git's going to complain about it. So we have the README file here. Let's go ahead and edit the README file to give an example of how to add stuff to Git. So we'll run nano readme and simply add in a line anywhere in this file. Type it right if you can, and we're going to save it and exit. It doesn't really matter what you added to the file, this is just for an example. So we've made a change to our repository, to the README file, but if we go to our web browser, our repository does not show the changes. So first we have to commit and then add the change to Git, and we'll do that now. So let's go back to our command line and run git status. You can see that it shows that the README file has changes, but it hasn't been staged for commit. And we can also run git diff against the files that it says has been changed, and it will show what the changes are. See, we've added a couple of lines to it. So we'll go ahead and add that change. We'll do git add and then the file name. So now if we run git status again, it says there's changes to be committed. And to commit it, we'll use git commit -m to add a message. And you will want to add a message that's descriptive of the change that you made. And so we edited the README file. And make sure you close the quotation marks around it. Now, depending on where you're working at, they may have specific protocols on the git commit message that you use, but we're just going to keep things simple for this video series here and simply add a commit message that's descriptive of the change that we made, and you can put in whatever message you want. So even though we've done that, if we were to go back to our site, it still hasn't been updated yet because there's one more thing we need to do. We need to push this change up to our repository. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our command line. So to push up to our repository, since this started as a clone at the beginning of this, we can simply run git push and hit enter, and it's going to ask for the passphrase if you don't have the agent running in the background, and it looks like it was successful. So now if we go back to our web browser, we can see that it is now showing the change that we made to our README file. So that's pretty cool. And we can see our git commit message here, and we can see how long ago it was made. So this version control feature of Git is a really powerful tool that you can get many benefits out of using both personally and in the workplace. So what we're going to do in this video series is we're going to write a bunch of Ansible codes and a bunch of Ansible playbooks, and then we're going to commit those messages up to our Git repository. Because in the real world, there may be more than one administrator to these servers that would need to pull down these playbooks and run them against the servers themselves. And they may make changes, and they'll push those changes up to the Git repository as well so that you can pull them back down whenever you need to run an Ansible playbook yourself. And it also gives you the safety of having all these scripts on one hard drive and then something happening to this one hard drive and you instantly lose them all. Now you may be asking, what would you do if you had code that you wouldn't want public since we made a public repository? Now I'm not going to get into that in this video series, but you can make a private repository if you wanted to, and there's some extra steps in order to do that, but again, we're not going to cover that in this video. We're just going to go over the basics using Ansible to automate server management. Again, what we did was edited the README file by using nano. We made a simple change, for example, removing a line. We saved it, we exited. So we did git status to see that the README file has been edited. We did git diff against the README file to see exactly what changes were made, and we removed a line. We did git add to add the changed README file to the repository. We did git commit and added a message saying that we edited the README file. We removed a line. And then we did a git push to push it up to our repository. And if you don't have the agent running, you're going to be asked for a passphrase. And then if you go back up to your website, you'll see that the extra line has been removed. And this is basically the workflow we'll be using for the rest of this series. And here we are at the end of this video. This was a quick run through of Git. In this video, we created a Git repository. We were able to pull that repository down to our workstation and make changes. Then we pushed those changes up to GitHub. And that is basically the workflow we will be using for the rest of this course from here on. In video 4, we will go ahead and install Ansible and run some commands, and that will be pretty cool. I really appreciate everyone making it to the end. I will see everyone in the next video.